Hi, this is Chimes Media and I'm James Williams. Well, I picked up a free newspaper on the Metro, it's called. It's on all the transport stations and that sort of thing. And the main headline on this particular one happened to be Gaza is charged with sex assault. Okay, that was the title of it. Okay, and well, what he's done is some woman on the train he was on was being called a fat cow, and he decided to comfort her by sitting next to her, and he gave her a little kiss on the cheek to comfort her as such, and then he was later arrested for sexual assault. I think it's perfectly ridiculous, but there we go. That's the way political correctness runs these days. It's a really, really sad society we now live in. I've seen a number of cases in the past where the nobility, if you like, or the chivalry of men has turned into tragedy. Like some guys decided to intervene with an argument between a man and a woman on the street. If he's lucky, he gets away with a verbal abuse. If he's not lucky, he gets stabbed to death, that kind of thing. That goes on. But it's not just about that. It's about the human side of things. And I wanted to show you that I've got a friend called Alan. He travels abroad quite often, and one of the places he visits is Vietnam. Now, in showing these pictures, I'm not trying to pick on Vietnam. Vietnam is one country amongst many hundreds, really. And the first picture I've got is a little collection of children and some adults in the background. As you can see, the children look reasonably well dressed. They look kind of healthy and looked after, but they're very attentive looking up, paying attention to what's going on. That's not the issue there. This is my friend Alan, who's visiting the orphanage. He's got a Vietnamese wife, and so therefore, he's with her as such. And there's the orphanage. There's all the cots. Now, I understand that in Ho Chi Minh City there are 20 children abandoned at orphanages per day. Per day. There is no, as I understand, there's no proper welfare system. So if a woman gets pregnant, she's extremely vulnerable being pregnant anyway. It greatly reduces her ability to work. Frequently, the father of the child doesn't hang about. He doesn't always hang about. So it's a case of maybe a one night stand. I don't know what it is, but he doesn't hang about. So she's left pregnant and vulnerable. And so what happens is that the women will come into a hospital and give birth and escape, flee basically, because they're going to get a huge hospital bill which they'll never be able to pay off. So I know that my American friends very often are in favour of private medical care and stuff like that. But there has to be, I don't care what system you've got, there has to be some sort of basic care for those who really, really can't afford it. And I think this focuses on this issue quite succinctly. Now you can see the children there. I said to Alan, I said, well, look, I give him, I'll give you 20 quid in donations if you want. He said, no, it's not donations they want. They've got there's food there. There's nappies, things like that. But it's just staff they're lacking. They haven't got the staff there to look after all these children. And if you look through them all, look, there's a rows of them there just lined up on little chairs, I suppose. This little boy is looking for someone to play with. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. Now, this particular little boy, he was found in a toilet. I don't mean in a cubicle toilet, actually in the toilet. He's got a disability. He's got disfigured fingers, I think, if you look at his right hand, and apparently his mouth, it doesn't open, so therefore he's being fed with milk through his nose as such. And he was abandoned there. The only thing that saved him, that he still had his umbilical cord attached, and for some weird reason it got tangled up and he wouldn't flush down the toilet. That's how tragic it is. Now, this is just Vietnam. Vietnam isn't by any means the worst place in the world, but this is, well, you could pick a place in Africa, I suppose. Similar sort of thing happening. I don't know. You could pick anywhere. Sometimes you get it in Britain. People neglect their children. It's terrible, you know. But this is the situation. This is now. There's Alan. He's meeting the children. Now, the interesting thing about that, look at that little boy in the yellow shirt. He's grabbing hold of him, and this is the thing. This is the thing that the children are missing. It's not food. It's not toys. It's not clothing. It is the touch of another human being, of an adult, someone that can give them love and comfort, even only for a few seconds. Several years ago, I mean, I was deep sea, merchant marine, as the Americans call it, merchant navy in Britain. I was deep sea, and I used to come home after being away for 5 or 6 months or so, and this is before the internet. So I didn't know what was going in. It was going into my home environment was virtually an alien environment because I've been around the world, all over the place on ships. And some local truck drivers, lorry drivers, had decided to get together and raise money for a local orphanage. This was in Lincolnshire in the East Midlands of England. And these guys are, tough guys, proper men sort of thing, if you like to call it that. And they put on the Santa Claus gear and handed out the presents. And, one or two of them were so overwhelmed with the emotion that they would be standing there with children crawling over them. And, the emotion that they felt was like a dam breaking. They couldn't believe these children were so needy, wanting human contact. It's hard to explain it. If you're a psychopath, you won't understand. It doesn't mean anything to you. So this isn't the video for you. This picture, because the girls and boys are, and I think the colour gives it away. That's the little girls. This is where the older ones are not babies anymore, toddlers and beyond. The girls are separated from the boys, but whether they're having an afternoon nap, I don't know. But they sleep where they can. And you can see this is the boys. The boys have got the same setup. So I'm sure they play together, just that they sleep separately. This is my friend Alan's wife holding one of the children. And there we are. This is Alan, and as you can see, the children can't get enough of him. It's really sad, isn't it? It's really sad when you see this kind of thing happening. And in the West, in Britain, in this political correct madness that we've got, pecking a woman on the cheek who looks like she needs help is seen as sexual assault. Having any association with children, touching children, play fighting, it's now frowned upon as some form of abuse. And I asked my friend Alan, I said, you've revealed this to me. He's given me permission to show these pictures and tell the story. But I asked my friend Alan, well, he's associated with a Christian group. I'm not a sort of strong Christian or anything, but I appreciate what they do. And he doesn't say anything much about it. And I said, well, why don't you say something? Why don't you tell people what you do? He told me that what he was most afraid of is because he's in his 50s, that people might consider him to be a paedophile. A paedophile, for God's sakes. That's what we're like in the West, isn't it? That's what we've come down to. He said, well, when I've spoken to people, they want to give me money, but it's not simply money that the situation requires. They've got sort of charity supplies, if you like. I don't know if it's the Vietnamese government that supplies it. I don't know. But they've got supplies. But it's the human touch. It's the lack of people to look after these kids. There's more than they can manage. I mean, he's saying 20 children a day in Ho Chi Minh City alone. This isn't in Ho Chi Minh City. I don't know where it is. This is just an ordinary town. But this is just Vietnam. What's happening in Laos? What's happening in Nigeria? What's happening in Central America? you know, there's more than we can cope with in this situation. It's no good. The answer that the left's seen, open up all the borders, let them all in. We can't cope with them. What the problem is the system that creates this situation. But if you go over to putting handouts of welfare, then you're endangering, encouraging the thing, and it's not going to get any better. You know, so it requires a systematic approach to deal with this dire need that our most vulnerable people in society, our children, and not necessarily our personal children, but children anyway, can get the help and support and the comfort and the human love that they so much need. Well, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care of yourself.